All right, let's talk CSS animations. And I'm not talking about just, simple hover effects. Today, we're diving way deeper. We're going to learn how to write a complete script for our web elements, turning them from just static objects into dynamic characters right there on the screen. Let's get into it.
So let's start with the big picture here. You're probably already familiar with CSS transitions, right? They're awesome for those smooth changes between two states, like a button changing color when you hover over it. That's a simple A to B journey. But at keyframes animations, that's where we get to create a whole story with multiple steps, from A to B, then maybe over to C, and wherever else we want to go. It's the difference between a simple fade and a complete, fully choreographed scene.
And this idea right here, this really gets to the heart of it. From this point on, I want you to think of yourself as a movie director. A transition is just a basic effect. A keyframes animation, though, is the detailed script you write for your actor, which in this case is the HTML element. You get to define exactly what happens and when.
Okay, so if we're going to be writing a script, where do we start? Well, we start with the @keyframes rule. This is the fundamental building block. It's the place where we'll define the entire sequence of our animation, step by step.
Now, notice the key phrase in this definition. A key phrase rule is a sequence of styles. This is so important because it's not tied to a user action like a hover or a click. No, it's a completely self-contained set of instructions that can run all on its own. And that gives us some incredible creative freedom. And here's how we actually structure that script. It's pretty logical, really. You always start at the beginning, which you can define with the keyword from or just 0%. Then you set the final state with 2 or 100%. But the real magic, the real storytelling, happens in between. You can add as many intermediate steps as you want using percentages, defining exactly what the element should look like at, say, 50% through the animation or 75% and so on.
Okay, so we've written our script with @keyframes. Fantastic. Now it's time to step into the director's chair and tell our element how to perform it. And we do this using a set of really powerful CSS properties that act like our directorial commands. Think of this as your director's toolkit. First up, animation name. This is how you cast your actor. It's what links your @keyframe script to the element you want to animate. Then you have animation duration, which sets how long the scene lasts. Animation timing function controls the pacing. Is it a slow, dramatic buildup or a sudden burst of energy? And animation iteration count decides if the performance happens just once or if you want some encores, maybe even an infinite loop. Every great production needs some special effects, right? And in CSS, our absolute go-to for high-performance visual magic is the transform property. These are the tools we use to create actual movement, rotation, and scaling without slowing down the browser.
First up is rotation. With the rotate function, you can spin elements around. Think of a loading icon spinning continuously, or maybe a card that flips over to reveal some information. It's a simple but incredibly powerful tool for adding that dynamic motion.
Next, we've got scaling. The scale function lets you make elements bigger or smaller. This is perfect for effects like a button that kind of pulses to draw your attention, or maybe a modal window that gracefully zooms into view. It adds a real sense of depth and focus. And finally, translation. Using Translate, you can move an element from one point to another on the screen, either horizontally, vertically, or both. This is really the foundation for any animation where an element needs to change its position, like a notification sliding in from the side of the screen.
Now, let's talk about something really important. As a great director, you want your production to be enjoyed by everyone, and that means being mindful of accessibility. Not all users want or can even tolerate lots of motion on their screen. For some people, you see, excessive animations can be really disorienting or even trigger physical discomfort. So as responsible creators, we absolutely need to respect that preference and provide an experience that's comfortable for everyone. And CSS gives us this fantastic built-in tool just for this purpose. The Prefers Reduced Motion Media query lets us detect if a user has enabled this setting in their operating system. Inside this query, we can simply override our animations, for example, by setting the duration to a tiny value like 1 millisecond. The animation technically runs, but it finishes instantly, which effectively turns it off and creates a more static, comfortable experience for those who need it. It's a really elegant solution. So there we have it. We've gone from a simple effect to a full-blown script, complete with a director, special effects, and an audience-first mindset. You now have the tools to be both the writer and the director of your own web animations. The only question left is, what story will your next animation tell?